Welcome to the unSeminary podcast. Are you looking for practical ministry help to drive your ministry further, faster? Have a sinking feeling that your ministry training didn't prepare you for the real world? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others in pursuit of stuff that we wish they had taught in seminary. Buckle up and let's get started with this week's unSeminary podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the unSeminary podcast. My name's Rich, the host here, and I'm just so glad that you've decided to spend some time with us. You know, here at unSeminary, we want to take some time out to encourage you. We know that as a church leader, you've got a lot going on going into this weekend of ministry, and we're just honored that you would take some time out to listen in today. We've got a great conversation with Clayton Walker from Experience Life Church in West Texas. So glad to have you here. So your church was started in 2007. It really has grown incredibly. About 4,000 people attend in 5 locations, if I'm correct. Clayton, why don't you tell us a little bit about your role there at Experience Life?
Sure. I'm the executive pastor, and so I oversee our campuses and ministries. And then one of those campuses is a campus we started on the college, Texas Tech University, on the college campus that we call Raider Church. And so I actually speak at that each week. And so I'm one of our teaching pastors too.
Nice, very good. My daughter's high school are the Raiders, and so appreciate that. She'd probably love to go to Raider Church for sure. So that's great. Well, even just that's a great kind of entree into, as a casual observer. First of all, if you're listening in and you're not following Experience Life, you need to. This is a great church, innovative church, doing all kinds of very interesting things, and I'm hoping we'll get to dig into some of it today. But as a casual observer, one of the things I've noticed is you do seem to have not only a focus, but then also an ability to actually reach the next generation. And I'd love to talk about that a little bit today. What are you learning on that front as you kind of think about reaching out into this next generation?
Sure. Well, one of the things that's been really unique, and it's also brings its own set of challenges, is that the average age at our church is 30 years old. And that's not counting most of our kids' ministry.
Right. Wow.
And so that brings a unique set of circumstances. It's fun. It does allow us to be, innovative and things like that. But I'm sure, as you can imagine, when you're reaching that young of a crowd, it brings its own set of circumstances and challenges. So it's not all, roses. Just we're reaching that kind of crowd. We're also reaching a group where over 60% of them have said that they weren't involved in a church before coming to Experience Life.
Wow.
And so it's a very unchurched group. It's a very young group, and which again brings with it its own set of challenges.
Yes. I think I would imagine a lot of church leaders are listening in today saying, wow, that would be great, but that's got some gold-plated problems attached to it, I'd imagine.
No doubt. It's very exciting. It's fun to be around that kind of life change.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to raising up new leaders, having leaders that are ready, things like giving, small group leaders, just all those kinds of things become a challenge, when you've reached that large of a percentage of unchurched people and that are also that young. We've had, I think it was like 33% of our people have committed their life to Jesus at Experience Life.
Wow.
And so again, that's a lot of fun, and it's exciting to be around. And it's been, a constant evaluation of, okay, what are we doing? What's our mission? And what do we need to do in order to reach those who are far from God, reach those who don't have a relationship with Jesus? And so whenever we're faced with something, that we need to do, or we feel like we need to change, in order to reach that crowd, we begin to do that. And I really think that starts with prayer. We have a big commitment to prayer at Experience Life. We have a prayer gathering during the middle of the week. We have a staff prayer time during every single week where our staff comes together to pray. So in a given week, we'll have hundreds of people coming together to pray because each campus has a prayer gathering where they come. And so we pray, and we really feel like that's important because we want to hear from God about the people that He's calling us to reach and what we need to do in order to go reach those people. And so
that sounds amazing. So pretty incredible. I think some people might be listening and saying, of course he's going to say that. You got to pray. Why don't you give us a sense of what happens at those prayer meetings? Kind of dive in a little bit. And then, how is it that, what is it that is happening at those events?
Sure. When we come together to pray, I think a lot of people have an idea of a prayer gathering, especially if they're younger, growing up, and it's boring and, it's something they don't really want to go to.
Right.
But when we come together to pray, it's fun, it's exciting. We have worship. We have our campus pastors lead that time, and we're praying about things that we're doing as a church. We pray about the messages in the series that we're in and being obedient to the things that we're hearing. We pray for people who are struggling. We have teams of people that are available during those services to pray with people who are struggling with any kind of life circumstance. And then, because of the group that we've been able to reach, we'll have people, say, hey, are you struggling with this? Do you have this going on in your life? Stand up, and we'll have people come and pray for them. And it could seem from the outside like to be a very awkward, thing. But I think you probably just have to trust for a church that's reaching this kind of percentage of unchurched people. It's not weird. It's not awkward. It is exciting. And we've really seen God just set the hearts of our people on fire for what he's calling us to do through prayer. That's where the passion and commitment and, vision comes from, to reach the unchurched, to reach those who are far from God, to be obedient to the mission that Jesus has given us. It comes from that prayer time.
Very cool. Now, I imagine, earlier you talked about being willing to change and try some new things. Yeah. What else have you had to do, because I think, again, that's one of those things church leaders will say all the time, we got to be willing to try stuff.
Right.
We got to reach people who, no one else is reaching. We got to be willing to do what no one else is doing. What are some of those things that Experience Life has had to do to change to reach people in your community?
Sure. Well, when we first started, our pastor, Pastor Chris Galanis, really believed in a cell church. And so we started out as a church of small groups, cell groups that were meeting, and we're only going to worship once a month or so. And we were really, and those are still things that we do. We still do groups that follow more of a cell church model. But when we began to meet together, it exploded. And so we're kind of faced with this decision. Okay, we had this model, we had this form that we thought we were really committed to, and that we thought God was going to use to reach the lost in West Texas. It didn't work that way.
Right. And
we had a choice. We could either keep doing what we were doing and, go probably much slower, not reach the lost, because in West Texas, people are still willing to come to an event. They're still willing to come to a gathering. And so when we met together, it just exploded. Hundreds, were coming. With the launch week of our church, we had 300 and something people come the very first, week. And within a year, we're over 1,000. And so, we had this choice. Do we keep meeting each week, or do we stay committed to this form, this model that we thought God was leading us to do? Well, we have something, we've always gone back to experiencing God. Henry Blackaby says, you look for where God's moving, you look for where he's working, and you join him there. So we see God moving and working in this weekend gathering that we really didn't think would work.
Right.
I mean, we really believe that. But it worked. And we were seeing the lost come and get saved. We were seeing people who didn't go to church anywhere and who hadn't been involved in church come. And so we decided that Jesus didn't call us to a model. He didn't call us to a form. He didn't call us to a way of doing things. He called us to make disciples, to reach the lost, to seek and to save the lost, just like his passion was. And however that happens, we're good with it.
Right.
Whatever way that works, that's the right way.
Right.
It wasn't our preconceived idea of what we thought was going to work. It's whatever way was working to accomplish the mission. And so that's where we really say, when it comes to anything, we've got to be more committed to the mission that Jesus gave us than to a model.
Absolutely. So you've really obviously had to adapt and change over the time, big time. What else have you been doing? What are some of those other changes that you've kind of ended up having to foist on the ministry, to see you continue to reach people?
Well, one of the things as a church in Lubbock, Texas, we've got Texas Tech University right here in our backyard. It's a college town. At Tech, I think there's something like 35,000 students enrolled.
Wow.
And so, we as a church, we had a lot of younger people, obviously. We had a lot of college students, but it was just like, we've got almost an unreached people group in our backyard in Texas Tech when we began to realize how many students go to Tech and how many students were involved in a church somewhere.
Right.
And so even what we were doing, which was working, well, for the most part, we were still realizing we're not reaching the number of college students that we're comfortable reaching. And so we decided that we were going to start something new. We began to evaluate, do we have environments, do we have places where these students could come and get plugged in and get involved? And we really began to realize, no, if we want to reach this group, we've got to go to them. We can't expect them to come to us. We've got to go to them. And so we decided to plant basically a church on Texas Tech's campus. Wow. It's in a big auditorium right there on campus where students from all over that area could literally walk to church if they wanted to. And so we started that. We actually started it at one of our campuses that's close to Texas Tech just to launch it and see how it would work, see what would happen. We had 500 students come the first night.
Oh my goodness, wow.
And so it outgrew that building. That worship center seats like 400. We had people in our lobby and people sitting all over the standing room only. It was crazy. And so we immediately decided to move it to another campus. Well, that campus was really, really far away. Well, we moved it, and it was far away from Texas Tech, that is. And so we moved it, and we had like 700 students the next week.
Oh, my goodness.
So then we did that another week, and then we moved it to the campus. And we moved it to this auditorium. And this past fall, we had, or our fall launch, we had nearly 1,000 students join us. And so, it was one of those things where we began to realize, hey, if we're gonna reach this group that we feel like God's calling us to reach, we've got to go to them. We've got to do things differently. We've got to put a different maybe leader and leadership in place that will be more relevant to that group in order to reach that group. So go ahead.
How does that differ from your other campuses? Can you kind of walk through that? How does that, because I think you're doing a bit different, programming there. Give us a sense of what's happening there.
Our other campuses are all by video, whether that's through satellite or if it's our backup file, depending upon how satellite is going that weekend. All of our campuses, our other campuses are on the same message, same series, things like that. Raider Church meets at Tuesday nights at 9. Okay. And so it has its own speaker. I speak there each week. And so we do our own series and things like that there because, again, we're trying to be more relevant to that crowd. That's another way in which we changed. When we were starting campuses, we really thought, hey, it's going to be by video. We're going to replicate, a teaching team to all of our campuses so that we can have campus pastors that are freed up to pastor people. But when we started this, Raider Church, we began to sense that's not what we need to do here. So we again broke from the mold that we had been doing, and again to reach this group. And I think when it comes to anything we do, and what we would challenge other people to do is even in America, we've got to live and think like missionaries.
That's good.
We've got to do whatever it takes to reach the people that God's calling us to reach. We can't be committed to a form or to a model. We've got to think like missionaries and do whatever it takes, change whatever it takes in order to reach that group.
Outside of the teaching at Raider Church, is the rest of the programming slightly different? Is it kind of geared specifically to those students? I'm assuming it is.
Yes. The services are a little bit different. The worship's a little bit different. A lot of the things stay very much the same. I mean, when it comes to groups, it's the same groups model. We don't have a kids ministry there, obviously, so that's different. But so probably in every other sense, it looks like one of our other campuses. It's just, everything is geared, every series, the messages, all the applications, it's all geared towards, a college student. Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, you obviously hit the ebb and flow of a college calendar, which is similar to a church calendar, but different enough that even that, you have to be more sensitive to those, when Frosh will arrive, that sort of stuff, is a bigger deal for sure on campus.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. It does have a different schedule. That's true.
Yeah, definitely. Give us a sense too, from a leadership point of view, how are you leading at Experience Life? My sense is that, just even the way you're leading is, is a bit different in that God's using that to help reach the next generation in your community.
Sure. Yeah. We're always looking for, a new group, a new batch of leaders to come in because as we start new things, we need a fresh group of leaders. So we're always looking at, this next group of leaders that we're going to need in order to start the next campus, start the next ministry, do whatever it takes. Is there another person that's going to be more effective at reaching a certain group than we are? And so we started a thing probably a couple of years ago called Protégé. And that developed into something where we were basically had a school of leadership to raise up new leaders. And that's been one of the biggest ways we've had to change in our leadership development, is just becoming intentional. We couldn't let it happen to us. We wanted to hire from within as much as possible, but it wasn't just happening on its own by accident. We really had to become more intentional about leadership development. And so Protégé runs about a year to a year and a half, and we even hired a guy that's one of his main jobs, is just to lead that and to be the dean of Protégé and help us raise up future leaders.
Very cool. But how many students are in Protégé at a time?
It'll range from like 15 to 20. And there's different phases to that. We have a phase 1 that's kind of intro to experience life, DNA. We read a book called Exponential that's been really impactful to us, and just kind of get a feel for who this group is. And then we'll take some of those on to a phase 2. So phase 1 could have 20 people in it. Phase 2 of Protégé, which lasts about a year, could have anywhere from 10 to 12, probably in it.
Very cool. Good. Is there anything else you'd love to share with us before we jump on with the rest of our program?
Man, I think, when it all comes back to us, a lot of our passion and desire has come from prayer. And I think we've seen the most impact in our church and at all of our campuses, even to things like attendance. We'll see, increase, or people getting saved, things like that, as we pray more. And so I think, man, my challenge to, any leader or church leader would be, what are all the different ways we can gather people together to pray? Because we believe God will bless that rather than us kind of going out on our own and saying, hey, we got this, and kind of doing that in our own strength and power.
This is the unSeminary podcast. Stuff you wish they taught in seminary.
All right, well, we're going to jump into the lightning round. That's the part of the show where we ask similar questions to people that are on the show all the time. Today, we are super excited to have Clayton Walker with us today from Experience Life Church in West Texas. If you haven't had a chance to follow them, you really do need to plug in. So, Clayton, what is an online resource that you're using these days that's been particularly helpful to you and your leadership?
Sure. I'd say the newest thing that we're using right now is an application called Slack.
Yeah, big time. Great tool. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we love it. We've been using it now for probably a few months. But, we begin to see others. I think it was like Michael Hyatt and other people like that recommending it. And so our leadership team began to try it and just kind of see what we thought. And then we rolled it out to the rest of our staff and really trained them. And we're really now just getting in the flow. It's like anything. Even though we've got a very young church, very young staff, we still have, it's hard to adopt anything new.
Right, yes.
And so going away from email and texting and things like that was difficult. But man, Slack is great because it combines all of that into one. When it comes to file sharing and things like that, it integrates with Dropbox and Google Docs and all kinds of other things. But it's been so great. It's just a tool. You have it on your iPad, iPhone. There's an application for Mac that we use. But yeah, we love it. It's just combined everything. Our email has cut down by like 90%.
Right.
And it is incredible.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out Slack, you really should. Most people that use it tell this a very similar story, or I should say organizations that have committed to it tell a similar story, that it's like, hey, if we can push everybody there and push through the learning curve,
right.
There are green fields on the other side there called less email, which is amazing. So what's a book you've read in the last 6 months, maybe to a year, that's shaping your thinking in ministry?
Sure. Well, we read every year. We read a book called Exponential, and I mentioned that for our Protégé class. We read that probably once a year. That's been very influential to us. So that's one that we read every year. But a couple of other ones would be, right now we're reading a book called Spiritual Multiplication in the Real World. It's about disciple-making movements that are happening around the globe. And that's one of the things that we're real passionate about. We want to learn from the people who are doing things well here in America, but also around the world, because we're actually seeing around the world, we're seeing multiplication movements happen around the world in much greater numbers, like Book of Acts kinds of stuff, and in the Islamic world and things like that. And we're not seeing as many of those things here in America. So we want to learn from people around the world. So spiritual multiplication in the real world has been huge. Another book that's impacted us in the last probably year has been a book called The New 1 Minute Manager, just about leading simply and having your direct reports and things like that know what their goals are and know the timing that they need to have those things done by. That's been huge for us. So yeah, those are a few of the books that we've been pretty impactful to us.
Similar, what's another ministry that you're looking to that's inspiring you these days?
Sure. We're always looking to Life Church. We love what they're doing, and it's a group, now with where we're at, that we're really looking for, okay, how do we take our next step? We've been at 4 campuses, 5 campuses, we're about to start another one in the next year. So that's a group, and plus they're 6 hours away from us. We can get in a car, and drive there. We can fly there cheap, and so that's always a church that we're looking to, that's been a real example for us.
Cool. Good. Who's a leader that you'd love to get 15 minutes with? They got to be alive today, that you'd love to get 15 minutes with, and why? So
for me, it would be Greg Mott. And if you're not familiar with who Greg Mott is, Greg Mott started Breakaway at Texas A&M, where they have nearly 10,000 college students meet in the basketball arena at Texas A&M. And so Greg transitioned from Breakaway, though, to, I believe, First Baptist Houston. And they just saw this, this ministry, which Raider Church is patterned a lot after Breakaway. We are just asking God to do the same thing at Texas Tech that we're seeing happen at Texas A&M. We figure if Aggies can do it, then Red Raiders got to do it. So,
nice.
So yeah, it would be Greg Mott. What he saw happen in launching Breakaway and seeing it get to where it was before he left. Man, I'd love to be able to sit down with him and learn from him.
Very cool. Very cool. Good. Well, when you're not, you're obviously a busy guy involved in a lot of different things. When you're not doing that, what do you do just to kind of kick back, relax, have some fun?
Sure. Well, my wife's a personal trainer, so I kind of have to work out.
Oh gosh. So yeah, that's great.
That's one of the things that we do that's fun and keeps us probably sane and stress-free. But I think besides that, I've got 3 kids. We love, we have dance parties in our kitchen. We like going to get ice cream, like taking vacations. Like my boys play baseball. So that stuff kind of rules our world too. So
very cool. I really appreciate you being on the show today, Clayton. If people want to get in touch with you or the church, how can they do that?
Sure. Well, our website's experiencelifenow.com. For Raider Church, it's raiderchurch.com. And we're on Twitter and Facebook, Clayton Walker, and Instagram, things like that. But yeah, the best way would be our website, experiencelifenow.com. Our staff's on there and things like that.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's unSeminary podcast. Don't be shy. We'd love to connect. Check out unSeminary inbox. You can sign up at unSeminary.com, and we'll send you helpful training resources every week. Plus, you'll gain immediate access to our exclusive members area with tons of resources you can use. Connect with Rich on Twitter @RichBirch or through email rich@unseminary.com. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode at unseminary.com. It includes links to what we talked about today and more. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Did you enjoy today's episode? Drop by iTunes and leave a review. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's unSeminary podcast. Join us next week when we'll learn more stuff we wish they taught in seminary.